Okay, if I'd like to just I'm going to ask you the same questions you've been asked a million times. Um, of course, you were approached by UGS, UG Solutions, immediately following your retirement, and you were recruited. You accepted a position to um, join a unit, like a security unit, to deploy at uh, distribution sites in Gaza at four different distribution sites. One, to my knowledge, was never really functional anyway, the one at Netsim. And you had arrived there. I think you've said, I think the earliest I've heard you mention that you were there sometime in March. Potentially, you've been in the region previously as well, which would make sense considering your time in Afghanistan and Iraq. Um, you arrive there, you start your work on May 26th, and then
Well, so I was hired by UG Solutions on May 13th.
hmm,
The recruiting process and the hiring process was very quick, about 2 to 3 days, and then by the 17th, I was in Virginia and flying to Tel Aviv, and I got into Israel on the 18th of May.
okay.
Just I started work on the immediately.
I
The
meant
first the first distribution operation into Gaza, actual food distribution was the 26th of May.
Right. So this is something I'm having difficulty, and I'm sure this has been brought up at some other point too. The very first sit-down interview, I think you had done a BBC interview. The very first time that your name had been brought up that I could find was on BBC. It's a very short clip of you describing the situation as a death trap. And the next thing that I found, like a longer venue was on a podcast where you have the maps that you've used so far, and there's been some debate about your consistency in your presence at which site at which time. So it starts at the very beginning. You had said that you started out at site one. Later it was site two, and then there was a really fascinating interview you'd done with one of your I don't know what you call it, I guess colleague. I forget the gentleman's name, but it's a podcast. He's a veteran himself, and I thought the conversation was stimulating, and I'm sure it was for you too to be able to talk with somebody who's not a dummy like me who understands your language. Um, and at that point, you had firmly said that the incident with Amir slash Abdullah had occurred in Site 3 on the 28th, I believe. So can you reconcile what happened in this transition in your description of your experience?
Well, I worked at all four of the sites. I worked at distribution and delivery at site one, two, three, and four. And in any given day, especially in the early days, I was working at multiple sites, multiple days, multiple distributions. So in the interview, when it was asked me about Amir, and I said site two, that was a mistake.
Hmm,
Site two and site three are right next to each other. So
right.
forgive me for mistaking a difference between 100 meters in a combat zone
That's
between two
that
different
close?
sites.
They're within a kilometer of one another?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know they were that
So
close.
sites one, two, and three are all within very, very, very close to one another. So on that day of meeting Amir, I had been on site two earlier that exact same day. We had done a very early distribution at about 4 in the morning at site two.
Hmm.
Then we had moved to site three. Site three is where I had met Amir. So in a first interview, when I said site two, that was a mistake. But what site it was doesn't really matter.
I guess again, the information is scant, and I couldn't. There's only one source that I could find, and it was from the Jerusalem Post, which had explicitly said that Site 3 hadn't began operations until May 29th.
That's not true.
I suspected it had something to do with the time difference and the publication of the paper itself as well. Uh, I'd have to double check that.
The
Um,
photos and videos that I have of Amir is on the 28th of May at 10 in the morning from site number 3.
28th of May. Okay. So can you, again, you've gone through this explanation. I've even asked you about it before myself. Um, uh, and you've talked about the day of. I guess the most important, I had two questions. One, you had said in another interview that you were asked by, I'm not sure if it was UGS or the IDF, you were asked to document your experience, your time at these distribution sites. You were tasked with photography and video taking. Why did they approach you with that?
On the very first day of distribution on the 27th of May, I had taken a picture of Palestinian men, a group of young Palestinian men who were very happy about having received food. And I took a picture of them and I shared that picture with the leadership when I returned to Kareem Shalom. I shared that picture with the UG Solutions and Safe Reach Solutions leadership, and they really liked it. And they said, "That's we need to make sure that we're capturing the story and that we're capturing what's happening for history, but also to make sure that the outside world sees the good we're doing." Because at that point, I guess the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation was already under some scrutiny. I did not know that at the time, but apparently this whole thing started and they were under scrutiny. So I was then, from that point, I was told directly by the UG Solutions Chief Operations Officer, John Corrigan, that he was like, "Hey, every day on site, you're going to take pictures and videos and share them with us. That's your additional duty. That's your additional job."
The
So I did it.
the John Corrigan, his position is, sorry, he's the director or
He was the UG Solutions Chief Operations Officer, COO.
COO. Where would he would be in direct communication with the IDF, correct?
We all
Oh,
were.
I
I was
guess
in
we're
I was in direct communication with IDF senior leadership and representatives from the Coordinating Office of the Governance in the Territories, COGOT, every day.
Yeah, it would just, it seems odd because the first time we spoke, I'd asked, and I thought it was really important to understand whether, and and I see different reports of this often of, there's a endemic of uh, Israeli soldiers committing suicide from their experience or going into, which I'm sure you understand as a veteran yourself, the effect, the psychological impact of war itself. Um, and I'd asked you whether you believe that these soldiers are committing these atrocities uh, by volition or if it is an order that's being passed down. And I think your answer was a little bit of both, but certainly from the top down, there is
Well,
not.
this is what people need to understand about for me, particularly when I'm asked a question, I answer the precise question that I have been asked without
Yes.
assumption or presumption. So, like in the interview with the Matt Tardio, the other veteran,
Hmm.
the question if IDF soldiers outside of site number 3 on the 28th of May were intentionally shooting at the crowd. I don't know. I wasn't in the tank with them. I wasn't at that machine gun with them. I didn't hear what conversations they were
Idea of
having.
soldiers are outside, you see fire. The only conclusion would be they're the only ones outside with a weapon
Well,
that
no, it was the IDF firing at the crowd, correct. But the IDF have expressed this numerous times that they fire at the crowd for crowd control.
is a form
So
of
were
communication.
they firing at the crowd for crowd control and were shooting into the crowd and didn't realize it? Were they shooting into the crowd and knew they were doing it and intentionally did it? So were they intentionally shooting at the crowd? Yes. Were
Right,
they intentionally intending to target and kill children? I can't say that for sure. I don't know.
right.
I can assume yes, However, later on, Israeli soldiers came out and did an interview with the Middle Eastern Eye and other platforms in Israel. From that site, there's a picture that Max Blumenthal has on the site where you see the scope and
Yes.
the Israeli sniper scope. That's site 3. That is site number 3. So
Yeah.
it then became clear to me that that they are targeting them intentionally. So
I
yeah,
think you yourself had said that that somebody, one of the higher ups, one of the leadership, had also said that had given a green light to allow the soldiers to do that.
that's
If I
right.
remember- yeah, okay. Um,
Of which the IDF admit.
yeah, they're brazen in their admission for atrocities for sure. Um, okay, so we've gotten to October, excuse me, May 28th. You've been tasked to document certain things, totally understandable. Can you, so there's the situation that's happened, um, where GHF has claimed that they've discovered Amir. I'm just going to call him Amir from here on. And they showed some footage of him and allegedly his mother as well, in order to refute your testimony. What is? Can you just your a very basic response of why that could occur, and what could
Why?
be
What could occur?
how could it be that they're claiming that Amir is alive? And what kind of circumstances in your experience on the 28th?
Amir is not alive. The young child Aboud, who they had on the 4th of September that they revealed to the world, is not Amir.
You don't believe that? Yeah. I think
No,
that's a common
doesn't look like him.
yeah,
They refused to allow anybody else to talk to him. They said that they used biometrics, but they refuse to provide that biometric information to anyone else.
right.
The child doesn't look the same. They don't have the same features. And why would any of us think that it would be beyond the CIA, Mossad, and a company who's operating are the Infidels Motorcycle Club to
Hmm.
lie? Why would we ever think that they would lie? Of course they're lying. Why is it that when I brought this out to the attention of the 28th of May, that they didn't care or do anything about it? And then all of a sudden, on the 4th of September, they come out with, oh, we found him. We found him on the 23rd of August, but we just weren't going to tell anybody anything until the 4th of September. And they won't reveal the mother, the woman that was with Aboud in that interview, is not the woman who was Amir's mother.
Hmm.
I spoke to Amir's mother and Amir's uncle who are still missing Amir, and that is not him. Period.
There was, I'm not sure if you're aware, there was a Palestinian journalist in Gaza who was investigating.
I am very aware of that. His name is Mohammed Salama, and he worked for the Middle Eastern Eye.
That's right.
He had proof, and I have the videos that were sent to me from his um, his coworker who is now pursuing the story of the images outside of site number 3 of women and civilians dead, shot dead from the IDF in that exact same location.
Hmm.
Children amongst them as well. Mohammed Salama was working on a story of children human trafficking by the IDF or by some other mechanism within Gaza. Children seem to be going missing quite often.
Right.
Part of his story was what had happened to Amir, because there had been reports of children's bodies having being taken for organ, black market, or what other type of nefarious activity. Mohammed Salama from the Middle Eastern Eye, a reporter inside of Gaza, was working on this story. He and his source were detained and interrogated by UG Solutions personnel on site number 3 on the 23rd of August. Magically, that's the day that UG Solutions, that GHF say that they've discovered Amir. And then on the 25th of August, Mohammed Salama was killed in that double tap strike on Nasser Hospital. Mohammed Salama was the reporter that was standing out on the balcony when that round hit and killed him and the other reporter from the Associated Press.
Right. Five reporters, actually.
Five total after the second strike, yes. But in that first strike, that person standing on that balcony is Mohammed Salama, the person that I had been in contact with, who had been working on the story, who had facts, evidence that Amir was dead.
You had been working with Mohammed?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. Hmm. Wow, I didn't know that. I mean, I'd followed. There was not too much that was published in the Middle East Eye, but uh, Israel has been pretty clear about assassinating journalists throughout the last 2 years, more than 300, I think, at this point. But this particular attack seemed like a very direct assassination of a particular individual. Uh,
Yes.
the
That
timing,
that direct attack on that particular individual was targeting Mohammed Salama. Days prior, they had interrogated him, asking him for his camera footage and asking him who he had talked to about Amir.
yeah.
GHF is complicit in the targeting and assassination of a murder of a reporter to cover up their story about what had happened to Amir. And the reality of it is, whether Amir was dead or alive, it does not change the fact that starving children are forced to travel long distances to get scraps of food, and then they are shot at on their way out or their way in. Him being dead or alive doesn't change that fact.
To be clear, like I said at the beginning, my intent, I want to demystify the criticism that's been levied against you,
Hmm?
because uh,
Well,
uh,
as a straight as clear as I can say it, the boy Abud, who they had that they uh, featured in this news piece, their big story, that child may very well be Abud, this other boy. Very well. I'm sure it is.
but
He
ultimately,
is not Amir.
yeah.
Two different people.
Are you still in contact or have any input on the continued investigation with Mohammed's colleague who's following this story still?
Yeah, they're continuing to put footage together, going through the cloud and other information that Muhammad Salama had saved because his camera and everything he had on him and his person is destroyed. There's nothing left. So they're going through what he had, his source, the source that he had that had been detained and interrogated by the UG Solutions personnel that day hasn't been seen since. So it's really hard to pick up what's left of the story other than what they had from the footage. I mean, most reporters don't reveal a whole lot when they're working on a story.
Sure, of course. I do want to uh, I want to hear your experience as somebody as a U.S. whistleblower in the last, I would say, 20 years or so, roughly. There's been quite a few high-profile whistleblowers, and we've seen a variety of different responses from the state and from the people, of course. First, I wanted to ask you about Captain Josephine Guilbeault. Um, I just overheard. I think you guys had a discussion a few days ago, and I just popped in at the right moment, and she was describing. She had said that, and it was shocking for me. She had said that her contacts in the CIA have informed her that Mossad has a bounty on her life. And I was taken aback because captain is not that's a significant rank in the military, and she's confirming that uh, one of the most powerful intelligence agencies on the planet, integral to the U.S. empire, is fully aware that this bounty on her life exists. Um, and my question was, well, why is the United States not responding to this? If this has been confirmed by both intelligence agency and she's saying it loud and clear, does this not the only other instance I could find was in the early 2000s, I believe Russia and Iran separately had there was allegations that they had put bounties on U.S. personnel in Iraq and Afghanistan, and based on very unsubstantiated evidence as well, unsubstantiated intelligence. But the response was expulsion of Russian diplomat, severe sanctions as well. It created quite a large issue. But in this case, to my knowledge, I haven't heard any response to her allegations of a foreign intelligence agency putting a bounty on a U.S. veteran. What does that say about the U.S.-Israeli relationship and the value that the U.S. government has on their veterans and military personnel?
The current administration with the United States government, from our Commander-in-Chief, Donald J. Trump, to our Secretary of War, which is a horrible rebranding, by the way, Hegseth, Marco Rubio, the Vice President, J.D. Vance, they don't care about the veteran community. They don't care about service members or veterans. Service members and veterans are a means to an ends for them, for power, money. They they are corrupt. They Our administration has put Israel first.
Right.
Israel is first. I mean, we've had politicians say in public forum on the record that that the United States is the second best nation in the world, second to Israel. Really? That we pay billions of dollars. The president of the United States just said this in the Oval Office on Monday, that we give Israel over $4 billion a year, and that they should be very proud of that, and that they should feel very special because they get a lot of money from us. These aren't secrets. The United States government values Israel, values Israeli soldiers, values Israeli lives above that of Americans, and certainly above that of American veterans. The current administration does not care about veterans or service members.
And do you think do you the lack of pressure, and I don't know, actually, maybe there is a lot of pressure on you, but certainly you've had the opportunity to make appearances on really large platforms. I'm a long time reader of Professor Chris Hedges' work in a long time, and for me, that was when your appearance on his show was confirmation for me that you're a reliable individual with truth and integrity behind your words. But it made me think your testimony is so damaging to the U.S.-Israeli relationship. It's a reaffirmation of what Palestinians have been saying for the last 2 years and also the last 70, roughly a century. But it's also very damaging to the optics of the U.S. empire. And I have to think about why it is that the state would allow this to happen without seemingly any impediments. Why do you think that is? Do you think maybe that they feel that this is inconsequential and the machine has a momentum that regardless of your testimony or Captain Gilbo's testimonies, that it doesn't matter? Or or in behind the scenes, is there some pressure or agitation?
Well, of course there is. Like I said, I've received death threats. I've received threats directly in person. I've received threats from anonymous emails and anonymous phone calls in the middle of the night, of, from fake numbers or burner numbers or unrestricted or restricted numbers, telling me to, threatening me with my life. I get followed. They don't even, if they're trying to be subtle about them following me, they're not. So I can only assume that they're making it unsubtle to know they're following me. I mean, I'm not a I mean, I'm a 25-year Army veteran, 18 years in the Green Berets. I know about tracking and counter tracking and surveillance and counter surveillance. And, if they're doing it to be overt to send a message, well, okay. If they're trying to be covert or sneaky about it, then I'm not really concerned about what they might do because they're a bunch of clowns. But me speaking out, something I want to push back on is that my testimony, makes that look bad. Their actions, their actions are what makes this look bad. I'm simply just telling the truth, a truth that growing that when I went to West Point, we were told duty, honor, country. When I graduated and I took an oath to the Constitution to swear to uphold, protect, and defend the Constitution, I took that seriously. My oath as an officer, my duty to our country, I took that seriously. So what they're getting in terms of me telling the truth and me standing up for what I think is morally and ethically right, well, they made me. I am a product of them. So if they expected me to go through life by living an oath and a code, and then to just turn my back on that for money, well, then they assumed wrong. But anything and everything that I am saying is not made up. It's not propaganda. It's not fantasy. It's not something that I heard and I'm just repeating. I saw it. And if the truth is hard to swallow, that says far more about those that are committing the atrocities and doing what they're doing than those that are speaking about it. The fact is that the United States, we have politicians who take money from a foreign entity, a foreign government lobbyist group. That is treason. We have leaders in our country who stand on America first, yet they put Israel first. In our country, they stand on make America great again. Well, putting Israel's interests before ours, putting any foreign government's interests before ours, and putting all of us in great risk, security wise and politically in the region, isn't making America great again. Our politicians are compromised. That has become clear to me that these politicians that so zealously support anything that Israel does without question, it's clear to me that they're compromised because their following of that narrative is in violation of their own political position and the positions that they got elected in. So they're compromised.
I
The
think
threats and everything in the background for me, I don't um I don't waste a lot of energy in worrying about it. They'll do what they do. I mean, this is United States between the United States and Israel, the most powerful military and intelligence apparatus in the world. What am I supposed to do? I
I
mean, what are
think
they going to do? Are they gonna uh, find a way to? I don't work. I'm not employed. I don't work for anybody, so they can't get me fired. My income is through my VA, my disability, and my retirement, so that can't be taken away. So financially, they are they gonna find a way to cut off my finances and I end up homeless living under a bridge? Okay, maybe, but at
I
least I
think
have
it
my
would find.
integrity. Are they going to are they going to send somebody to beat me up? Ooh, I've been shot before. I've lived through a lot. I can live through getting beat up, and I'd welcome them to try.
I think
Um,
the biggest impact, I mean, outside your testimony, and like you said, there is no lack of evidence, both through testimonies of Palestinians themselves, through journalists. I mean, we're so far beyond these 2 years. We're so far beyond collecting evidence. There's a ICC court case. There's a warrant out for Kantz and Milikowski. And the ICJ has also ruled in favor regarding the legal settlements and is also had also ruled in favor of provisions against the potential of a genocide. So, as far as evidence goes, that is not, and I don't think that's even up for debate at this point. I don't think it was by the end of October in 2023. I think something that bothers me is that when GHF started to work in Gaza, they had almost immediately journalists and Palestinians had already described it as this is, as you had described it as well, that this is a death trap. This is being used as a means of creating this perpetual death march for a large number of Palestinians, as you had said, in the tens of thousands, who have to march, upwards of between 20 to 30 kilometers a day to get to the site and return. They're not sure if they're going to receive that aid. They're being shot at by small arms, by tank shells, by mortars. They had already made that very clear to the world that this is occurring. Your testimony came out again, which was not surprising. As you had mentioned, Mohammed Salama was also covering this story immediately, for which he was assassinated. Then GHF's attempt to refute your testimony. Now their argument is being used in the corporate media narrative as a pushback of something, to paraphrase, that see that, we were right all along. His testimony is wrong. We have this so-called evidence, which again, it's not for me to judge. I don't have the eyes or the expertise to be able to make that judgment for myself. But they're claiming that because they were able to refute your testimony, it means that all the testimonies that preceded it by the Palestinians is also falsified.
Well, I stand on the fact that they haven't refuted anything.
Hmm.
They haven't refuted the videos of the shooting. They haven't refuted the fact that these distribution sites are built in active operational combat engagement areas. They haven't refuted any of that. They haven't refuted the fact that they provide such little food that it's on the brink of, it's basically below the threshold of starvation. They haven't refuted the fact that they provide no water. They haven't refuted the fact that on the 28th of May, there was a young boy who came to our site who walked 8 to 10 kilometers without shoes, who had to trek through dangerous conditions to get there, and then who got no food other than scraps, and then was pushed off the site by tear gas and stun grenades, who was then shot at. So if their premise is that that young boy, oh, well, he didn't die then, here he is. Okay. They haven't refuted any of the testimony before that leading up to the point of everything else that's wrong. They haven't refuted the fact that thousands of other children have been killed. They haven't refuted the fact that they're not indiscriminately saturation bombing the entire Gaza Strip. They haven't refuted anything. And if there's anybody that believes what they're saying and taking it as fact based on the notion of, oh, trust me, bro, they provided no evidence.
Well,
They
it's
provide
also
no one to
geared with a
have access
huge,
to any of the evidence that they say.
yeah. It's
They
also
are,
backed by a global oligopoly of news corporations who are also
there's only
running
one
funding
news
institutions.
company, mainstream, that has picked up their story, and that is
That's right.
Fox News.
That's right.
CNN doesn't even believe their shit.
Yeah.
Fox News is the only news outlet that has picked up their story and is running with it. That is their only avenue into the public media. We are in a different time.
Yes.
Traditional legacy media outlets like Fox News and CNN or MSNBC,
Right.
no one's watching that. No one takes that seriously. My parents watch Fox News and they're in their 70s. What are they going to do? The young generation of people that are listening and going to do something don't get their news from Fox. So I could care less. They have not refuted anything. And if there's anyone that believes that they have, then they're either unintelligent and can't critically think on their own, or they're not going to believe anything else other than the Zionist narrative or what GHF says, because it's not a matter of logic and rationale. It's a matter of ignorance. I call it aggressive ignorance. They are aggressively ignorant